September regular meeting. Today's Tuesday, September 12th, 2023. It is 6:04 p.m. Will the secretary please call roll?
Yes. Okay. Matt Austin.
Here.
Caitlin Edwards. Matt Flaherty.
Here.
David.
Here.
Nigela.
Here.
Nolan. Emma.
Here.
John Eldon.
Here.
Jessica Davis. Hannah, I'm here. Justin.
Here.
Alex. Heidi.
Here.
And Dennis.
Okay, today's agenda was distributed by email on Friday, September 8th, maybe? Are there any objections to adopting the agenda as distributed and shown on the current screen? Oh, Dennis is here. Okay, hearing none, the agenda is adopted. The minutes for our August regular meeting were included in the packet. Are there any corrections? Okay, hearing none, the minutes are approved. We will move on to public comment. Each member has 3 minutes to speak if anyone has anything they'd like to say. Sure, Joe. Yeah.
You know what? Why don't you take this one also over there?
Hi there, my name is Joseph Winia. I am providing an update on the Back to Earth Collective Composting Program that was jointly sponsored in part by the City of Bloomington and the Monroe County Solid Waste Management District. I am pleased to announce that we have one participating site lined up. There are 3 households enrolled for a total of 7 members participating, and we are looking at launching potentially by the end of this week or sometime next week. So this is the first site. It will be very exciting to see how it goes. There's the possibility of launching one more site potentially this year, and then the remaining, any sites remaining going into winter will likely be resumed, or pursuit will be resumed for additional sites in the spring, with a target of completing the set of 6 sites by the end of spring 2024. So just wanted to let everyone know, and I will be available for questions if anybody wants to chat about it after the meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Would you like to say anything?
I'll just introduce myself.
Sure.
My name is Sarah Carmona. I'm a junior at Bloomington High School South. I'm happy to be here. This is my first time at the sustainability meeting. And I'm just looking forward to listening and to know how everything goes. I'm part of the environmental club at South, so that's sort of why I'm here, just to know more and to hear you guys all out.
Great, thank you. Okay. We'll move on to report from acting chair. That is me. I just wanted to share that Green Drinks is back and woo! I'm not exactly sure what it is. If anyone else can speak more eloquently about the importance of it or what it is, Matt, maybe?
It's a monthly meeting with a certain topic where people come together to learn more about that topic, I forget what the topic is this upcoming month, but I think you put $5 down, there's hors d'oeuvres, and it's usually a way to network and to learn about something that you hadn't maybe been aware of before.
Sure, okay.
The ones I've seen in other cities, I didn't know we had any here.
Yeah, it stopped when COVID hit, but it was going.
I do.
Is it hosted by Upland?
It was hosted at.
Or
I don't know if it is still there.
And is it monthly?
It typically is monthly, yes. Yeah, I've found value. I know when Earth Keepers or Green Camino was first getting up and running, they were an invited guest, and so I've always found value in them myself.
Nolan Hendon, one of our commissioners, it was long part of the organizing committee
Okay.
pre-pandemic when it was still running. So Nolan may have good insight too at a future meeting. But yeah, I was excited to see it back.
Yeah.
It's like a national thing, but
Yeah.
so monthly like environmental topics. It was like pretty well attended too. I'd say like 40 to 60 people, a lot of meetings in that Upland back room space, a nice kind of social.
That space no longer exists.
Yes.
It's been stripped, so. Yeah, I was shocked when I saw that as well.
Yeah, in other places I've seen it often bring in like a researcher or expert in some field and talk about whatever they're doing. I don't know if that was the case here, but
Yeah.
seems like a good opportunity.
Yeah, I spoke one time about the Living Future Institute, the Green Drinks, probably 2 years ago.
Great. So the Green Drinks this month is September 27th at 6 p.m. at Upland. Doors open at 5:30. So great opportunity to go do that. All right.
Phil's green drinks, alcoholic.
We'll move on to report from staff liaison.
I was hoping to provide good news tonight about our neighborhood sustainability grant program, but we got some feedback from legal, and for the low-income population grant program, we will need to set up grant agreements with the neighborhood group, and so that's set up where they can get a grant ahead of time before they go out and purchase whatever they want to purchase with the grant. Whereas the general population, they have to purchase whatever they want to buy, you know, composting bins or equipment to install a rain garden or whatever they want to install. They would have to purchase everything up front and get reimbursed. But for low-income populations, we have to have a grant agreement in place, and we've submitted a mock-up grant agreement for legal to review and approve. So we're just waiting for that before launching the program.
Okay. Good to know.
Yeah. And we Michaela went through the program,
Yeah.
the grant management software with Emma.
Yep.
And so she's on board, she knows how it works, and
Yep.
so hopefully we'll hear back from legal next month and be able to launch.
Very good.
So
Is there a certain requirement that the neighborhood needs to meet in order to be eligible for that? Or
80% area of median
Oh.
income, yeah. And then just the other thing I wanted to talk about was our Climate Ready Community Survey. It's still live. It's available until October 1st. And so it's a survey where our community can have input on our climate risks and vulnerabilities. So if you can help spread the word, I would appreciate it. And that's it.
Did you have an update about the working group grants? About like.
Oh, those, I think we should launch everything all at the same time.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'll announce that next
Okay.
month as well.
Sounds good.
Hopefully.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, we'll move into reports from council.
Thank you. A few things. First, this could come from you as well, Sean, but just a quick update I wanted to share on what's called Project 46, which is the regional climate collaborative that has gotten underway, spearheaded by Mayor Hamilton and Mayor Leonard from Columbus. So this we had a climate convening last October with some subject matter experts and folks helping to convene people from across Bartholomew, Monroe, and Brown counties to think regionally about climate action. And the idea is for it to be kind of multi-governmental unit and also cross-sectoral. So we've got some real leaders in that space. I'll credit Catalent here in Bloomington for having some, and others around food compost. Other, I think, Cook Group has done a lot with food composting, for instance. Catalent's been doing a lot on sort of renewable energy procurement. Cummins over in Columbus has been long been a leader on kind of again renewable energy procurement. They've got a really good model of a virtual power purchase agreement that they've implemented that others could replicate. They've also been really working to transition their core business towards a zero carbon future. So the idea was to try to get local governments that are all in different places and private sector folks who all sort of share this connection in the, we'll call it northern Indiana uplands, and of course connected by State Road 46 to try to increase collective ambition and learn from one another, have some exchange among partners. So I think multiple councils, City Council, Columbus Council, and the National Town Council have all committed some level of resourcing to this, and still working on getting some additional financial support, hopefully from Monroe County and Bartholomew County. And we just had a first steering committee meeting yesterday, which is meant to be kind of high-level guidance. They're quarterly meetings. There's a youth representative from Columbus High School System, I'm on it at the request of Mayor Hamilton, Mayors Hamilton and Lenup, but also then presumptively the mayors who will replace both of them. Mayor Lenup is also wrapping up his final term in office. Some representatives from IU Health, from Cummins, the Community Foundation in Bartholomew County, and Nashville Town Council, or no, sorry, Nashville Town Manager rather, and maybe one or two others. So,
Cassis. She was
Yeah.
at Cassis Corporation.
Thank you. So really just getting started. There's been some press releases recently that you could probably find pretty easily by just Googling Bloomington Project 46. But some goals include having a regional greenhouse gas emissions inventory, assessing where we are, what the opportunities are for emissions reductions, maybe learning from those private sector entities that are already tracking and working to reduce their emissions, understanding regional vulnerabilities and collaboration around things like watershed management or extreme heat management. And then again, looking for opportunities to share in collective ambition and hopefully improve ambition through that with large institutions, companies, and government. Also looking to leverage the considerable funding opportunities out there available through the Inflation Reduction Act and the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, many of which are just sort of coming online or not even online yet, will be coordinated through state agencies and others, and federal agencies. And I think I'm missing something on the goals list. What am I missing? That's all right. We'll leave it at that for now. So really, it's still in the sort of forming stage and trying to set up some structures. So there will be also anticipated working groups focused on certain areas like energy or transportation, and maybe even sub-working groups within those. So there are probably opportunities to be involved, which may be of interest to the Commission in the future. But I wanted to just highlight that sort of regional climate collaborative is getting underway. These have probably been increasing gradually around the country. We've got some peer examples both in the region and Indiana, coordinated through the Northwest Indiana Regional Planning Commission. There's a 3-county kind of effort. The greater Chicago region has the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus that leads a regional climate collaborative that's, for instance, coordinated on EV charging infrastructure across their region, right? Trying to do that in an intentional and coordinated way. And then also the greater Cincinnati area has a regional climate collaborative underway. So we've got some good neighbors to lean into and learn from. And yeah, it's an exciting thing just getting underway. Also wanted to mention, I don't know if y'all have seen any of the news over the last year or two of Sibling Cities Initiative, which is a new sort of domestic analog to sister cities, which are sort of more widely known. The first ones were Palo Alto and Bloomington. Some folks who had connections across those two cities set it up, and they're hosting a series of town hall events between the two cities this fall. So I think the first one's actually it might be tonight. there's I forget when the first one is, but in October, in early October, like October 10th or something, there's a climate town hall. And I can find it. I was trying to quickly find the press release for that, but I failed before starting to speak. So I'll find that and circulate it with folks maybe of interest. That's going to be hosted at the Monroe County Library and have some like small group breakout kind of discussion and sort of peer exchange across cities and just learning what's working, what the challenges are on the climate front. I know there's a high school youth group actually that's been driving that forward in Palo Alto in part, and have been connecting with Vicki Vinker, who is a Palo Alto City Council member and one of the founders with the Sibling Cities Initiative, to try to help her understand the climate landscape here and facilitate connections with folks. And in particular, I know we have a high school student joining us in the back. I was not currently connected with any high school initiatives in Bloomington area, but would love to hear more about maybe after the meeting about what's going on with the Environmental Club in Bloomington High School South. I know some years ago we had members of the Youth Environmental Sustainability Society, which was started at Bloomington High School North, work with the commission a little bit on a resolution before the city council. So might be a good thing to connect on. So yeah, just wanted folks to be aware of that. Final note, I know I've mentioned it a few times in past meetings, and we've sort of been on pause with the board and commission review and reforms that this council was looking at as we had a change in membership of our committee. We finally scoped some shared meeting availability, and starting Thursday night this week, we are reconvening twice monthly, trying to wrap up some board and commission reform recommendations for the council by the end of the year that they could consider legislation around. That's all based on an organizational assessment from a consulting group about our boards and commissions. As I mentioned before, one of the key recommendations of concern to this group is the possibility of combining the Commission on Sustainability and the Environmental Commission. We've heard from folks about that, including David, I think, at one of our meetings. Is that right?
Yep.
And as I mentioned before, I anticipate having a dedicated meeting to this topic. So that's not what this meeting Thursday is about. We're kind of getting Councilmember Voland up to speed in the committee work. But sometime within the next month or so, I anticipate having a dedicated meeting that we would invite BCOS and EC members to, as well as staff, to weigh in with thoughts on that proposal, pros, cons, ways this might proceed if it was pursued. So just a reminder to be on the lookout for that. I'll be sure to reach out to the commission when we have a date nailed down. And I think that is all for me. Happy to answer questions if folks have them.
Any questions for Matt?
Do you happen to know if there's a justice or equity working group on Project 46, the Just Transition?
I would say those aren't set up yet. So all we really have is the shell of the local government resourcing and support, and then a steering committee. But I think it's a good question and an important one, and yeah, I'll try to make sure that I'm at least one voice there for ensuring that there's a strong equity and justice lens in our work, whether that's a dedicated working group or some other structure. But yeah, thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
Actually, you mentioned food waste that Catalent or somebody else has been working on.
Maybe.
Is that any more details on that? Is that just like within their cafeteria? Or if you don't have any details, that's fine too.
Yeah, I don't
food
know.
waste, my ears perk up. So.
No, I don't know enough. Maybe Sean does. That was, and maybe Baxter at some point too. There were multiple of the larger kind of folks in the pharmaceutical and medical device spaces who I know had gone through some real work with their cafeterias to have composting available and reduce food waste. So I'm not real sure the details. I bet Joe Winia probably knows back there, and you can probably chat with him after the meeting about it.
Yeah, are there new options for that? Like what you do, you can collect the food waste, but what do you do with it? Are there any new facilities around the last 6 months? Drive to Indy and compost it there or something?
The city's been talking with a company called Earth Mama who specifically just does transportation and they drop it off somewhere else. So that's in the communication list. If there's anything that I'm not aware of.
That's the latest. I've been working with Tom Glasson, and he's writing up a draft RFP, and he'll be sending it out to whatever composting companies we can find in Indy and around. But I found only like 5 companies in Indy, and I think he sent out initial emails to them, and no one responded. So it looks like Earth Mom is the only one so far that's interested.
Is Tom the solid waste district?
Yeah, that's the director. And so he wrote up the draft. I helped him look at it and edit it, and it's in legal review right now.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions, comments before we move on to reports from commissioners? Okay, Just Transition Working Group. Do you have any reports?
Just that we were not able to meet this month due to illnesses and the busy time of year in general that it is.
All right. Community outreach, Justin.
No major developments for this month. Yeah, it's pretty busy.
All right. Waste management.
Did you want to cover the grant?
Yeah, so we met and are working on putting together an application for a grant that isn't available yet, but want to be prepared with a grant when it's available. So yeah, we'll put together a grant for our compost captains project. If you wanna.
On my side, I went to the Climate Leadership Summit up in Gary, held by Earth Charter and sponsored by many different groups. There was definitely a definite focus on solutions for food waste, and I made sure to scream from the rooftops about bokashi And for those of you that are not familiar with Japanese bokashi, it is a way to pickle or ferment your food waste. It's incredible because in traditional composting, 50% of the nutrients and minerals go up in the air. With bokashi, you keep 90% of it. It's a vastly better option. You also get a tea, and that tea is incredible for feeding your plants, indoor and outdoor plants. You can also even put, if you've got septic or just whatever, you can also just put it down your pipes, and that good bacteria actually helps clean your pipes. So there's plenty of other benefits I could talk about, but there were numerous people that came up to me and thanked me for introducing them to the idea. With that being said, that is what with that being said, that is what my sister and I at the Urban Farm are pursuing heavily. We currently have a little pilot program not connected to the city at all, that we're accepting 10 neighbors' food waste, and now we're actually upgrading that to 20 neighbors, but they are now going to have to do the bokashi themselves. It's 5-gallon buckets, it's anaerobic, it's where you layer it with a inoculated wheat bran. And for me, in our experience, that is going to be the best way to combat food waste, because you get two beneficial products out of it. And you're not going to deal with the flies because it's anaerobic, you're not going to deal with the smell, it can just sit on your countertop. It's absolutely wonderful. So next month, I'm going to ask my sister to come in to speak quickly, 5-10 minutes, just about our experience with running this, our own little pilot, and the challenges that we've run into, and why we're moving away from just accepting people's food waste, and now saying, if you want to be a part of the program, you're going to have to layer it yourself and do all that. So we've learned a lot. We've been doing it for about 7.5 months. We are applying for a grant from the Indiana Department of Environmental Management so that we can do a training session with as many people that are looking to deal with their food waste in an environmentally sound manner, especially with the 1,000 residential customers that are left in the lurch by Earthkeeper's unfortunate demise. And then next Thursday at the Citizens Advisory Committee with the Monroe County Solid Waste District, which I'm on as well, I have a gentleman named Matt Wasserman who's going to be doing a quick 10-15 minute presentation about bokashi, and it's going to be on a larger scale. He does it on a much larger scale, and that ties directly into Bloomington, with their looking into a biodigester. The city looking into that with the biodigester. They have 3 levels. The first level, if we didn't get enough high-strength organic waste, it would be $1 million loss a year, which doesn't sound like a smart investment. If they get more HSOW, then it would be a break even. If they got a ton of HSOW, which would end up having to come out of Indianapolis most likely, transporting waste doesn't make sense, but then the city would be in the black. After listening to individual from West Lafayette talk about their biodigester, West Lafayette does collect food waste, and it does go to the biodigester. So I think Bloomington's better than West Lafayette, and IU's better than Purdue, but in this case, they are kicking our rear ends. So I think it's a big mistake for the city if they do end up approving the biodigester to not also collect food waste. It's a massive opportunity. What's that?
Sounds like they want to, just to break even. Like, where else are they getting their organic waste?
They're gonna have to go to industrial, and correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, they're gonna have to go to industrial sites that have high-strength organic waste, because that's all that they're, it's gonna be HSOW and stuff out of the water treatment plant.
Yeah.
Those are the 2 sources, but having to truck that stuff down. But then there's the logistics of having to collect all the food waste.
Yeah, that's what.
So, but if the city does do a biodigester, it's, in my opinion, a no-brainer to collect food waste from large industrial sources, cafeterias, as well as residents.
Did they talk about how they prevent contamination in West Lafayette? Do you know?
It's a good question.
We
I don't remember. They didn't. It didn't seem to be a big issue, but contamination is innately going to happen. But that's the other great thing about bokashi. If you bokashi it first, you can have your meat in there. You can even bokashi bones. We do it separately, but you can have a lot more stuff in your compost if you bokashi it first. And so back to Matt Wasserman and the guy, he's out of New Jersey doing this on industrial scale. Once you bokashi it, then all of, on the industrial side, that then, once again, provides a product that's usable, but then it goes to the biodigester. So that would be the best option, to bokashi it first and then get a product out of it and then get a secondary product out of it once it's into the biodigester. But yeah, as to the contamination, I don't have an answer for that.
That doesn't address the plastic contamination, post-consumer. I had a student do a survey of a bunch of Lloyd's universities and how they handled food waste. This is maybe 5 years ago, when it looked like IU might do something. And a lot of the places that have large-scale food waste capture and composting or whatever do it pre-consumer. So they go with cafeteria waste rather than the bin that's half full of plastic utensils and whatnot. So that's like the low-hanging fruit, is get the peelings from the cafeterias and the orange rinds, whatever. You know what I mean?
And to your point with the pre-consumer, a lot of that pre-consumer is also going to go to animal feed at this point, because they are not allowed to get post-consumer.
Yeah, I think there's still nobody bothers to capture it, so IU, I think,
Right.
just is like, throw it in the truck with everything else.
Right.
You know, so they still.
I'm saying there's other options
Yeah,
for
there are
pre-consumer besides,
yeah.
whereas post-consumer, the
Oh,
options are less.
I mean
based on-
not at like an orange juice production factory, but at like a cafeteria at
Right.
IU, where a bunch of food comes in and some of it gets consumer and a lot of it's waste. It's like it's not, yeah. So that's the low-hanging fruit, and then you got the problem of people throwing their plates in with the food waste and whatnot.
But you don't have nearly as much when it comes to residential.
Mm.
But yeah, it's high volume where you're gonna get a lot more contamination. So,
Okay.
but yes, I'll have my sister come in and she will tell us what our experience has been like. And
Okay.
it sure is gnarly, digging your hands into, even with gloves on, into other people's food waste.
You should do a demonstration, that would be fun.
You sure you want that smell in the room? I don't think you do.
Just kidding. All right.
Okay, we're gonna move on to our presentation tonight. We'd welcome Todd Thompson. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Ready or not? He's gonna give a
Bring me up.
presentation.
Thank you. My name is Todd Thompson. I'm the director of the Indiana Geological and Water Survey. We're a state agency that's embedded in an R1 university. I did give a similar version of this talk to Green Drinks a few years ago. So depending on how much beer you had, you might remember it or not. But what I'm going to do is cover a little bit of the geology for mostly Bloomington, Monroe County. You had asked me a number of questions, and when your questions came out, this was disjointed and that disjointed, which meant that maybe it would be a good time for everybody to just get a little summary of the geology of the area that we live in, so that we're all talking about the same thing. I do want to point out, if you are a hiker and really enjoy going to geologic sites, we have this thing called Indiana Rocks, and you can get it from Amazon, and it's got 50 sites in Indiana where you can take hikes and learn something about the geology. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the bedrock geologic map of Indiana, and this one over here shows surficial material that's laying on top of it. And this is the way geologists typically think about things. We think about the rock, or we think about the unconsolidated material that's on top of it. The colors over here for the bedrock are related to the age of the rocks. The color over here is related to the types of sediments, with the yellows being more sands and gravels, and the greens being more glacial till, and then you got the coastal deposits that are up there along the lake. And it's only in this area here on the southern part where the bedrock is exposed. The rest of Indiana, certainly 2/3 of Indiana, is covered with glacial material, with as much as 400 feet of it up here in this upper corner of the state. I'm not going to talk about this anymore. I'm going to talk about this from now on. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so Indiana is essentially an anticline. What happened to my notebook here? I want to get my. An anticline is where the rocks are bent upward. And so if the rocks are bent upward like this, it's called an anticline. And if the rocks are bent downward like this, it's called a syncline. And Indiana is essentially an anticline with the rocks bent up like this. And if we take those rocks that are bent up like this and we cut them off, we just shear them off across the top, you'll see that you end up getting changes in the pattern of the rocks on each side side of this anticline. Well, the anticline can be like this, or the anticline can be actually tilted. And if it's tilted and we cut it off, then what it ends up doing is making a U-shaped pattern on the ground. So Indiana is essentially an anticline with a U-shaped pattern that goes like this. So that's the basic pattern of all of Indiana. We actually have unbelievably simple geology from the standpoint of the structural geology with that. So next one, please. So what that means is where we are down here in the southern part of the lake, the rocks are actually dipping from 30 to 50 feet per mile to the southwest. So the rocks that are underneath our feet right now, which is the Salem limestone, if I go that way 1 mile, they'll be 30 feet lower. If I go 2 miles, it'll be 60, 75 feet, 70 feet later, depending on where it is. And what they're doing is dipping into what's known as the Illinois Basin. And so there's the Illinois Basin here, Michigan Basin here, Appalachian Basin here. And what I want you to do is think about this basin is think about a whole bunch of nested mixing bowls, essentially flared mixing bowls where one fits inside of the other and fits inside of the other and fits in until there's no space left. And that's what the Illinois Basin is. And these rocks get to be 12,000 some feet deep in that area. So there's a lot. And we're dipping about 15 to 20 feet per mile in the northern part of the state. Next one. Okay, another way to think about the geology of Indiana is through physiographic provinces. And this essentially looks at more of the topography. And so the northern part of the state are broken into a number of places. It's all pretty much flatland. And then it's down here in the south where we have two glacial boundaries. We have this glacial boundary right here. And that's a glacial boundary about 130 to 160,000 years ago. Then there's another glacial boundary up here. And this is the glacial boundary known as the Wisconsin, or the last glacial maximum, which was about 24,000 years ago. Only the very northern part of Monroe County is glaciated. So to put this in perspective, when you go up the hill, going from Martinsville up to the top of the hill, you're at this boundary right here, and go about a quarter mile farther north. So every time you drive there from now on, you can wave at the last glacial maximum at 24,000 years ago. We can look at the topography of the area where we live in. And we have the upland areas that's known as the Norman Upland. This is sort of the Borden. We're getting over into Brown County area. We have this middle area, which is known as the Mitchell Plateau, which is mostly our limestones. And then we have the Indiana Uplands area, which the geologists call the Crawford Uplands. And the Crawford Uplands, essentially interbedded sands and shales and stuff like that. So let's move to the next one. Let's take the same diagram and we'll turn it just a little bit. And here we've kind of smashed it out, and you can see how more rugged it is in this area, simply because it wasn't ever glaciated. The glaciers didn't wipe out the topography up here, just covered it. It's still just as rugged up there as would be down in here. And so we're going from, when we're here in Monroe County, we're going from this Norman Upland, the high hills in relief that are over in Brown County, to the lowland area where we are right now, and into the upper highland areas as we get farther to the west. And so next, just hit the clicker. And if you do this, you look at where, if we go from west to east, here's the Mitchell Plain. It generally consists of limestone that has a whole bunch of sinkholes and other things. And then when you look off to the west, you get the upland areas into Monroe County. This change in topography is called the Springville Rise. And then this is the Crawford Upland, or the Indiana Uplands in that area. All right, so that's how the geology changes. Okay, so now we got a real geologic map and got away from a cartoon. So this is a geologic map of Monroe County, and there are a lot of colors on here and a lot of lines and other things, and let me just explain them just a little bit. First of all, the colors. The colors represent different rock units, and these are the rock units over here, with the Brown County stone being essentially the Borden rocks, and those are those ones that you can see up here in the gray. And then on top of that is the Harrodsburg and Ramp Creek Formation. The Ramp Creek is the one where all the geodes show up. All right, so that's it. And Salem limestone is our world famous Indiana limestone with that. And then we have St. Genevieve, Paoli, and West Baden. They don't mean anything to you. They're only ways that we can talk about things. All right, we just give names to it so we can talk about it. But if you look at how the geology changes, we essentially have the Borden, and then we go to younger and younger and younger rocks as we move to the southwest. So there's essentially a strike going north-northwest, south-southeast, and then the trend of the rocks is changing, going down to the southwest like this. So this is the lowland area in here, higher topography here, and then the high upland areas into the southwest in that direction. Next one, please. We have a fault that runs along the very western or eastern edge of Monroe County. You just jumped ahead real fast on me, but that's all right. It's known as the Mount Carmel Fault. And then onto the eastern side, the western side of that is the Leesville Anticline. The Leesville Anticline is a slight anticlinal bend in the rocks in that area. And so in the early 1900s, people put drill holes into that because anticlines are great places to find natural gas and petroleum. And they drilled down some 750 feet and they found natural gas and petroleum deposits, quickly depleted it. But now today what we do is we bring natural gas up from the southwest and we pump it into the ground during the summer months so that we can then pull it back out during the winter months along the Leesville Anticline. Next one, please. There we go. So this is a cross-section line. So what I want you to think about this is we're going to dig a very deep trench right along that line, and we're going to hop down in there and we're going to look at the rocks this way. And if we look at the rocks this way, next one please, there's the cross-section. So here's the Mount Carmel Fault where it crosses the fault. Then this is the Leesville Anticline. And notice there's one big color here because the Borden group is 650 to 700 feet thick. So it's a really thick unit, whereas these are much thinner units. For example, Salem limestone's about 85 feet thick. But you can see what's happening is we have this dome over here, and then the rocks are dipping to the southwest in that direction.
That Borden group is like the mudstone and shale and that sort of
It's
thing?
mostly first of all, it's a fine-grained sandstone at the top, and then it changes into the shale as you go farther down, and then gets into a really dense shale as you get down into the New Providence farther down. Next one, please. Okay, so how do we understand this? Well, we do this by getting out in the field. And this is a map over here on the side of some geologic mapping that I was doing years ago. Those are all my outcrops.
Wow.
And so we collect a lot of outcrops and just go up and down every stream that you kind of do. And we find them, we get accurate elevations using GPS and accurate locations associated for each of the stratigraphic units. Next one, please. Where we need data, we go ahead and we drill holes in the ground. These are cores. And so a core is essentially you're going to drill a cylinder into the ground and you're going to bring rock up in that cylinder. And we drill 200-foot holes and we put them where we didn't have good geologic data from outcrop. We wanted to be able to get better control from the cores. Next one. We generally drill on the top of the hills. And we like to drill by water towers because water towers are on top of the hills. And also they have water, and we need water to drill. And so we generally drill a 200-foot hole. This is the Van Buren Water Tower down off of Leonard Springs Road. And next one, please. We get things like this. We get core out of the ground next. We also run tools down through the hole that measures natural radioactivity, conductivity, resistivity of the rock, other kind of things so we can learn more about the characteristics and properties of the rock. And then we take them into the laboratory next. And we spend hours and hours and hours describing inch by inch by inch. And so the Indiana Geological Survey has a core library, just like you would have rocks. And all of these cores in Monroe County are in our library, and they're freely available for anybody to go ahead and look at. Okay, next. Next slide. It's coming. There it is. So these are a bunch of cores. We'll back up just one, if you could. What we're going to do is look at a cross section right here. So we're going to go from core to core to core to core to core, and then we go to the next one, and you see this shows the topography. And so here we are going to the southwest. We've described each one of these rocks. The yellows are mostly sands. The blues are limestones. The purples are dolostones. And then what we do is we know the formation. So next one. We correlate them. So this is the famous Indiana limestone. See how blocky it is? Boy, you want to carve that out of the ground. And you can get it out of the ground here, but by the time you get over into here, it's way too deep. It's hundreds of feet below the ground. And with that, so you can see the rocks are dipping to the southwest. Next one, please. Okay, let's see. It's about 3 miles, and it's dipping about 100 feet. So if I divide 3 into 100, that's somewhere around 33 feet per mile. So it's standard dip that you normally see in our area. Next one. Sometimes we don't hang things on topography. Sometimes we hang things based on a property that's in the rock. And this is a really cool one. This is the St. Louis limestone. So this is the stone that's out at Cars Park and farther to the west. In the middle of it happens to be a coral horizon. And we've now hung all of our cores starting from Owen County clear down to Orange County on that coral horizon. And you can see that there's a very distinct difference in the geology above and below that coral horizon. So this is where, and when you're in this unit is where you get all the sinkholes. When you're in this unit, you don't get quite as many sinkholes. So there's a hydrostratigraphically different geology above and below that coral horizon. And if you want to see it, I got some pictures for you. Go ahead. So this is Leonard Springs, and this is the cave when you come down the stairs. And right across through the top of this is the coral horizon. Go ahead and see it. They're finger corals. They stick out like this. They're silicified. And so it's a worldwide sea level rise, actually. And we're documenting our rocks in this area. Next one, please. We get it in core. Here they are here. Here's another core. They're in here. And if you want to really trace it a little bit farther, keep going. This is the entrance to Spring Mill. So the next time you get down to Spring Mill, just park over here as you go into the entrance and walk on over, and you can see the corals that are exposed. And I think I have another picture right about there. Next one, please. There they are. So it's called Acrocyathus proliferensis. Another term is lithostratian. So it's kind of a fun horizon. There's actually a new one right out of here where Vernal Pike goes over 69. They made a night right at the very bottom of the outcrop. You can find the corals there. Next one, please. We have joints, and joints are essentially cracks in the rock, but they're not a fault, so there's no offsetting on them. And we have a fairly pervasive jointing system that runs about 80 to 85 degrees that goes east-west, and we have another jointing system that runs pretty much north-south. And this shows different Rose diagrams from all over different parts of the state. This is out at McCormick's Creek. This is the St. Louis. This is the east-west jointing system. This is the north-south, and you see what it's doing. It's cracking the rock up into a number of different blocks. So when you want to, you can move water through the rock itself, but it's much easier to move water along the joints. And so in the subsurface, a lot of our karst as well as our caves follow the more prevalent east-west jointing system out of the two. Next. This is really cool. This is an old photograph from the early 1900s of the, what's it called, Hunter Quarry. This is Arlington Road, and this is that area northwest of the bypass where the county is looking into making a limestone park. And this is what it looked like in the early 1900s. And what they were doing was systematically moving from west to east as they were cutting the stone out of the ground. And what they were doing over here was getting themselves ready for a new area. Unfortunately, how they were doing that was using water to wash the soil off into Stout Creek. We don't want to do that today. But the reason I put this up is I wanted you to see this relief on the surface of the limestone. We think about the rock being flat underneath this, but it's not. It has a lot of relief to it. And this is that prevalent east-west jointing system out of the whole thing. Next one will get a nice close-up of it. That's what it looked like. I'm guessing that this is probably Salem. This would be St. Louis limestone up here, and I'll show you why in just a second. Okay, so here's aggregate quarrying in our area. This is the Rogers Quarry. The airport is sitting right in here. What they're doing is they're going down through this siliciclastics of sandstone shales and some coals, and they're going down to try to get this unit right here, which is the St. Genevieve limestone. So next picture, please. And here's what it looks like in the quarries. This is the St. Genevieve, and then there's a breccia here. This is paoli, and then this is the siliciclastic unit on the top. So they're going to strip that off so they can get down to that limestone down below. This is an aggregate quarry. The idea for that is they want to break this up into little small pieces and sell it as aggregate. And so that's a very different than the dimension stone quarry where you want to carve the rock out and keep it as a big block. All right, next one, please. Okay, so this is dimension stone quarry, and here's that Hunter Quarry area that I showed you just a little while ago. This is the Reed Quarry. This was the Star Quarry. It's now abandoned. And what they're doing is they're going through the St. Louis limestone here, They want a little bit of that on the surface so they can go to this MS, which is the Salem limestone. So the quarries are going where the stone is allowing them to go. Right? And what they typically want is a little bit of St. Louis, and I'll show you why. Next one, please. This is this is Rockport Road. This is the Maple Hill Quarry right there. This is the Century Quarry. This is where the Woolery Mill is, and this is where the new subdivision is supposed to go into that everybody's talking about. Notice that there is really good stone there. There's really good stone there because people have put quarries there. And across from the Century Quarry now, there's this big subdivision over here. So that stone is no longer available to our nation because we put a bunch of houses on top of it. Nobody's going to be able to buy those houses anymore. And if we put that big community up in this area where there happen to be quarries, that'll take that away as a resource also. Next one, please. This is farther south. So here's 37, I guess. 37 coming south. I can't get 37 out of my brain anymore. This is the Crown Quarry. It's abandoned. This is the Breaking Away Quarry. It used to be sitting right here before they filled it in. The Adams Quarry is active right at the moment. This is Independent Limestone, and this is Victorolitic. Notice what they're always doing. They're taking a little bit of the St. Louis away to get to the stone down below. They want a little bit of the St. Louis before they go down into the Salem. Next one, please. And here's the reason for that. What we're looking at is the east-west jointing system. And there's a joint and a joint and a crack and another crack and another crack. And there's a little bit of St. Louis left right here. And notice that the joints are kind of closed, but as soon as you lose that cover of St. Louis, you get these very deep erosion areas that are we call them grikes. The industry calls them the mud seams. You can imagine everybody who has a house on the Salem limestone has this underneath them. You know, you can't see it, but that's what it's really underneath. And where they have their St. Louis, it looks more and more like this. Here's another view in the next picture. So there's quite a bit of, and you always wonder, somebody's putting a new building, they drill in a hole, and they're drilling another hole, and they're drilling another hole, and you go, what, I waste a lot of money, that rock's all flat underneath there. Well, it really isn't. This is what it looks like underneath. So you've got to divorce yourself from thinking of flat rock underneath the ground. Next one, please. Okay, I just want to give you a little bit, I got to give you history. So this is where we are 340 million years ago. Indiana was 10 to 15 degrees south of the equator at that time. And we're going to go in our Wayback Machine. Here's what it looked like. Next one. Ooh, it looked like the Bahamas. So this is sand. This is a carbonate sand. It's not quartz sand. This is ground up fossil fragments. And what's happening is the waves are driving it in onshore like this and stacking it up. And that's what makes our famous Indiana limestone. And if we follow some of these intrashoal channels, they go back to, next one, into a lagoon on the back side. Whoops.
Sorry.
That's okay. We'll get to that one eventually. Oh, we're just going fast now.
Sorry.
Use your up and down arrow.
Oh yeah.
Okay, you've taken away all of my suspense now.
Sorry.
You gotta get backwards.
I wasn't
You're
paying
going the wrong direction.
Can someone else
Hadn't
do
taken
this?
it away.
Yeah, just use the cursor.
Oh, okay. Oh.
Just use the arrow key. Keep going back. More. Okay, and this is what it was. And then what happens is the sand gets over into lagoon. In the Mississippian, this had all bryozoans and an animal living in here. Today it's grasses. So it's an entirely different thing. But this is kind of what it looks like in the Bahamas, and you can think about mentally what it looked like here 340 million years ago. Next one, please. Okay, so this is Independent. This is Rockport Road going down through here. And when we go farther to the west, we start to get those siliciclastics sitting up on top of the hill. And what I want you to notice is, notice all the sinkholes where the carbonate is. But where the siliciclastic is, the sinkholes just disappear on top of that. So where the carbonate's exposed is where we get a lot of sinkholes. And now today we have this wonderful thing called LiDAR, which means you have a brand new pair of glasses that you can see the earth with. So the next one shows the same thing with the LiDAR. and you can see the quarry here. You can see all the sinkholes and other things. Look at this area over here with all the sinks and that. Boy, imagine trying to do any kind of infrastructure in that area with that. I can almost make a geologic map by playing connect the dots with the sinkholes. So if you start over here and you start playing connect the dots with all of these sinkholes as you run around here, this is the Paoli limestone. And then you can just make it, you know where the carbonate is because the sinkholes show up there. Next one, please. This is north of town. So this is going out of town. Here's 37 or 69 now. And old 37 is, I'm up too close. I wanted to let you see that there's also sinkholes that occur in the Harrodsburg and Ramp Creek. So if you go to the next one, please. You can see on the top of the hill there, here's the road going north out of town. There are some little sinkholes, but they're a little bit different because they don't go quite as deep because they go down and they hit that sandstone. And when they hit that sandstone, the water follows along the sandstone and goes out right at the boundary between the carbonate and the sandstone. So I can almost make a geologic map by playing connect the dots with these deep ravines through there. So there's a reason that holds it. One last one to look at very quickly. This is down at Lake Monroe. Here's the dam here. This is the spillway, and we're going to take a picture of the spillway. This is the Brown County stone, or what we call the Borden group. This is the Ramp Creek that has the geodes in it, and this is the Harrodsburg limestone. So there's a distinct pattern that goes on over and over again. It is dipping to the southwest at 30 to 30 feet per mile, but if you do the tangent on that, it's 0.4 degrees. You're not going to see it at an outcrop, so you've got to go from spot to spot to spot. Okay, next one. Here's your takeaway. The rocks are exposed in most of Monroe County because only the northern part of the county was glaciated. I was trying to remember what I wrote. Rocks in Monroe County strike north, northwest, south, southeast, and they dip about 30 to 35 feet per mile. So as we go from the northeastern part of the county across to the southwest, we're going to see a systematic change in the geology between those. A vertical fault occurs with a gentle incline. Limestone dissolves. It always does. Rainwater comes down, it interacts with the soil, it creates carbonic acid and helps dissolve the limestone away. Considerable relief can occur on a limestone surface in various forms of what's called epikarst. There's the finger coral, Acrocyathus proliferescens. You're going to remember that one. That's an important one. We can trace it for everywhere. Quarry operators place their quarry where they can get the rock they need. I think that's an important one to remember, is that they're just not willy-nilly, oh, I think I got this piece of ground, I think I'll just go right here. They're going where they get the stuff that they need. Lastly, I don't need to be here. Your senior environmental planner for the city of Bloomington is a geologist. Linda Thompson is a geologist. And at one time she worked at the survey, and next slide please. She made this map showing the distribution of the Salem limestone in 1991. So if you want to maintain Indiana limestone as the nation's building stone, this is the area where development should be somewhat limited, because you're going to cover up that stone and it's not going to be available to anybody anymore with that. All right, that's all I had. You only gave me 10 minutes. How'd I do? I was going fast.
Great.
All right, so questions?
Yeah, fascinating. Thank you. Very, very cool. I was down near that on the Independence mine, I think it was. I was talking to the landowner down there who said that somebody was cutting limestone underground, so basically dug a big hole and then cut sideways in that Salem bedrock.
Yes.
Is that common that you can do that? It's got to be deep enough, right?
The first underground quarry for Salem limestone started down in Eureka, down in Lawrence County. And now Polycore, which owns the Victor Ulitic quarry, is going underground also with that. You generally need at least 100, 150 feet of relief above you, but it's a tried and true technique.
Is that, so for places where they put subdivisions on top of, I'm a soil scientist, so like putting it on top of a good quality resource is always frustrating. Can they go underneath any subdivisions? Does that change, like legally, can you do that?
No, I'm not an engineer, so I'm not going to get into that one. I do know that right now they are actually going underneath the road down there. Cool. That would be what, Victor Pike. They're going under the road.
Interesting.
Yeah, I can't remember how many acres down near Eureka is all underground, but it's all farmland above them down
Yeah.
there.
Okay.
Yeah, Elliott Stone Company started that technique quite a number of years ago. They've been bought out by Polycor. Polycor has bought just most of the limestone industry around here right now. Yeah.
With this slide that you said that where the exposed part of the bedrock, there's an anticline and an east-west jointing, did you say?
Yeah.
Where are we at risk for groundwater pollution or runoff or I mean, where is the anticline that would expose us to agricultural pollution or Indianapolis?
Yeah, so I don't think the anticline is much of a big issue.
No.
It's more the jointing. So just about anywhere you drop something on the ground, it's going to fall on one of those east-west joints.
So anywhere that's
Anywhere in the county.
okay. North of here, north of the exposed.
Oh,
bedrock,
north
right?
of this?
Yeah.
Well, now we're getting into, I gotta go strip all the unconsolidated material out. That same pattern continues to the north. But you're getting increasing amounts of unconsolidated material on top of that. And certainly when you get into the tills, you know, it's less permeable and it's harder to work, you know, get material down through it. But down in here, you know, the tills and stuff are only like 25 feet thick, but then you get up into here about 400 feet thick.
Okay.
I don't think I'm answering your question.
No, I'm
I don't
saying
know
what
that I'm
effect-
About runoff from
Yeah,
the
what effect-
consolidated surfaces down into the exposed bedrock, and then it gets
Right.
into the groundwater. Is it?
What is the effect of the geology around us that may play a factor in our environmental sustainability with any kind of pollution that would be carried by water? I mean, does this put us, does being at this point around all the
So
other
it
topsoil?
it depends on the rock that's underneath you. All right, so let's talk about, you know, the Borden Group in Brown County. All right, it doesn't give up water and it doesn't take water very well either. You know, so most people have a really hard time putting a water well into the Borden. It's less of a problem once you move into the carbonates and not quite as hard as you get into the upland area. But in the upland area now, most of our drinking water is associated with springs. You know, so now you're worrying about contaminating a spring, and we have a website that shows where springs come out and the connection underneath the ground. So it's amazing sometimes that the, you know, you drop something on the ground here and 20 miles away is where it's going to come up.
Yeah, I was with all the sinkholes, I would expect it to be
Yeah.
something of a concern that
It would be
Where
a
in a-
concern, and I would more likely expect it to be following the east-west jointing system.
I see. Okay, so the anticline doesn't have as much.
The
play
anticline
with
doesn't
the
have an impact on it.
Okay.
Plus, it's very thin carbonate over there on top of Borden.
So we don't have anything in the surrounding areas that we have to really worry about except to our.
Except what you're doing
East.
yourself.
Well, and I was gonna say, being exposed bedrock, we don't have much in the way of aquifers here or groundwater, correct?
Well, that's the reason Lake Monroe's where it
That's
is.
why we
And
end up
where was
doing,
Lake Monroe put? It was put on top of Borden because Borden holds water.
so more of our water supply comes from surface water,
Yes.
which makes it much more susceptible to pollution and runoffs.
Yeah.
Different sort of
Yeah, so
problems.
it's a watershed issue now,
Yep.
than a more of a geologic issue.
Thank you.
Todd, I feel like I learned a lot from your presentation, so thank you very much for that. I had a question about just how should we think about individuals who are more vulnerable to climate change, given kind of the topography that you talked about, bedrock, et cetera? Like, how should we think about how
You know,
communities are
I
being
have to
impacted?
tell you the truth, I haven't
Yeah.
fired very many neurons on that one.
No, I'm just
But
kidding.
I can think of certain things, you know, first of all, you know, if you are reliant on your water coming from a spring and you have a drought condition, you know, you're not supplying water to that, to the household associated with that. I mean, mostly, as we just pointed out, for us where we are, we're getting everything from the reservoir, so it's more important where those drops of waters go into Monroe Lake than other groundwater wells and things like that.
Have you all thought, I'm sorry, this is a side question. Have you all thought about doing a mapping system for vulnerable communities in Indiana? Is this something that, you know, has already been done? I know like other states have done this mapping system to let us know which communities are more vulnerable?
We as an organization have not done that.
Okay.
Most of the federal grants that we go for now require us to follow the Justice 40 initiative. And some of the programs that we are doing, we have to, we're bringing in the Polis Center or the Center for Rural Engagement to help us with those issues. The Justice 40 is a big, broad, all-encompassing issue, and a lot of us are having a little trouble with it because, you know, putting a cement plant in Mitchell, is there a vulnerable community there? How far away does somebody have to be a vulnerable community? You know, those are issues that are being addressed. The DOE has put a wonderful website together to help out with understanding most of that.
Sorry, one more.
Yeah, it's okay. I'll be here as long as you guys want.
You brought up it sounded like you were in favor of preserving the quarry areas instead of building residential areas around them so that we could still have access to the stone. What is your concern from a sustainability perspective? Is there any benefit to the community at large of having those outside of just the stone resource?
It is a stone resource, so that's it. It's a mineral resource that is very recognizable, that comes from our area. It does support, you know, jobs and part of our community. Not as much as it used to in times past and stuff. So it's.
What's the risk of depleting that resource?
I used to say we had hundreds and hundreds of years of reserves, but with the rapid expansion around the margins of Bloomington, and most of that rapid expansion is moving over top of viable stone. Here's a good example too. Let's talk about the prison that was going to go down there off of off 69 and Tap. Thank you. That was the next road down, wasn't it? The prison was next down. Back up on one of my map. Go to my map at the end. I can show you the property. Can we move forward? Use the down arrow.
Right.
Keep going. You're too far now. I need you to hit F5 so you get back into my presentation.
Hit F5. Function F5.
There we go. Now just work through and I'll tell you when to stop. Keep going. We're going to go down to some of my maps when we're showing the quarries. I want to get down to the one that had Maple Hill on it. There we go, getting close. One more, dimensions don't go there. There we go. Okay, back up one. Okay, so this is where the prison was planning on going. And so this is what's happening right now is the quarrying company is running up against their property right here, and the prison was going to go right there, which was going to take that resource away, because what they want to take is a little bit of this St. Louis off so they can get into the Salem. You know, so there's an example of a land use issue that, you know, the quarry operator knows that they're running out of land, and they come and talk to me and say, where can we get, you know, get more quarries? And they're certainly not going to go this way anymore. They could go this way. I think I was the only one who commented on the website about, you know, did anybody think about the natural resource that's underneath that ground when you put a building out there? I think I was totally ignored, but that's all right. That's just an example of you know, this resource will essentially be lost. Obviously, it's not going there, but.
Is there any impact of claiming that resource?
Of doing what?
Any environmental impact of claiming that resource to the surrounding area, having a quarry there?
You know, quarries make big holes in the ground. Limestone is a Tums tablet, so it's a little bit different than quarrying, you know, like or mining coal and other kind of stuff where you're getting, you know, abandoned mine lands, fluids and stuff like that. You know, it's pretty innocuous. I think the one thing I would like the quarry operators to do is clean up after themselves a little bit more. You know, they can backfill their pits, but generally that's not been a tradition, because if you want to open up a quarry, the best place to open up a quarry was where there was a quarry.
Gotcha. Okay. So there's not a general environmental impact to be concerned about from harvesting this resource.
Right now, what's happening is they have to keep all their water on site. In the old days, they didn't used to do that. They used to be able to allow their rock flour to go downstream. But now that the type of saw that they're using now, which is a big belt saw. It requires water. They want to keep their water on site now.
Okay.
As a building material, do you see this as like a more climate-friendly alternative because of what it's displacing potentially?
It's displacing concrete.
Right.
Yeah. Probably concrete itself is the 7th largest polluter in the world. Making concrete. Because, essentially you're taking calcium carbonate and you're driving the oxygen off. So you have CaCO. And then what you're going to do is add it back with water again. But it takes a lot of heat and energy to drive that oxygen off. And so, I'm simplifying a process here very much. But, yeah, it's an issue. So we have a project at the Geological Survey right now that's funded by the DOE where we're looking at the potential of carbon capture and sequestration at the Mitchell plant, the Heidelberg plant down at Mitchell. In that case, we're going to have to go thousands of feet into the ground to inject CO2 into the ground. You need to inject CO2 at the depths greater than 2,500 feet, so it keeps it in what's known as a critical state. It's sort of a liquid, sort of a gas, and it allows you to inject it. So we'll be looking at the various horizons below there that might be suitable for injection.
All right, any more questions for Todd?
You mentioned a quarry that was no longer being mined. Why would this company, if the prison had been placed there, why would they just not move to that quarry? Or why would somebody stop pulling out limestone?
Well, there's a lot of economic reasons. Right. And it's gone like this through time when you look at what's happened. The glass and steel era in the 1960s was really hard on the limestone industry. That's why we got all those little limestone houses around our place, because somebody had to move away from, building larger buildings, and they had to keep the sustainable, practice going on for them with it.
Yeah, like I said, why not just go back to a quarry that's already been open?
Yeah, and it could be the geology too. I mean, that's the one thing that I work with them quite a bit on is you're going in that direction and you're going to lose your resource. Okay. Because it's not this uniform rock. I showed you this variability of these channels that cut through it, and you might have a channel cutting through. Plus, we had 8 million years and sea level went up and down quite a number of times between that. So there's variability within the rock itself.
They might have mined all that in that area if they could.
Generally, they're mining right up to their property line is what happens most of the time. Yeah. I wish they would use geologists more. You would think that quarrying you would use a geologist, but they have me to come every once in a while and talk about stuff. Generally, they come to me and say things are changing in this direction, and I ask them, well, what was in this big hole in the ground? They didn't keep any record of what was going out of the ground. Okay,
all right,
thanks.
any questions or last comments? All right, thank you, Todd.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thanks, Todd.
Oh, you don't need to. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Okay, we're gonna move into resolutions for second reading. So I believe these are Najla's.
Oh, yeah. Do we want to pull? Yeah, we should probably pull that up. The handout. Yeah. Okay, so hopefully everyone saw my email I sent last week. As a reminder that tonight I've asked BCause to vote on endorsing the letter in this handout, which is the very last page, page 3. Oh, I guess I'm off with the numbers there, whatever page that is. Yeah, so I think we read this in the last meeting. Hopefully everyone's reviewed it as well outside of the meeting. And as a reminder, the main reasons why I'm asking BCause to endorse this report is because I believe that the problems identified in the public safety report point to a lot of the same problems that overlap with sustainability. Specifically, some of the main causes of pollution within our city limits are from people who are living in non-traditional living areas, and have no choice but to cause the pollution they're causing, presumably, as well as a frequent. I'm not sure how this ranks as far as like top sources of pollution, but a frequent perception in Bloomington when you think about environmental sustainability are also the drug needles people mention that are disposed of by drug users around the city, and these are two very specific causes of unsustainability that our report addresses and asks the city to address in a more strategic way. As a reminder, the crux of the reason why the report suggests a new department of community safety and resilience is because in our outreach, which included a systems gap analysis, speaking with the major department heads of all the city departments that address public safety and related areas, we found that none of the departments in the city view it as within their purview to coordinate a citywide strategic response to resolving these three threats to public safety, which were identified equally by all stakeholders at all levels, from the most marginalized people to the main stakeholders in city government. All agreed that the top main three visible rising threats to public safety as mental illness, drug use, and homelessness. Yet no department in the city viewed it as within their purview to coordinate a strategic response to ensure these numbers are going in the other direction. And furthermore, our report, the other major structural problem, why we suggest this new department, is because we found all the other departments have conflicting goals. I shouldn't say all, most of them have all other goals besides safety. So especially the safety facing departments. So for example, think of Bloomington Police Department. Of course, they prioritize human safety, but they also prioritize law enforcement, which are different goals. And sometimes those goals conflict. And we found in our outreach and community member stakeholder testimony that in many cases in our city, when those goals conflict, the current public safety agencies choose the goals of law enforcement over human safety, particularly when it concerns the safety of people in these three marginalized groups. And that's sort of why they're safety marginalized as well, right? Because their safety needs are not viewed as priorities by the existing system. So that's sort of the crux of the findings of our report, which included 2 years of quantitative, qualitative research, systems analysis. None of us are systems experts, but we had a public safety town hall that included around 45 members of the public, as well as we did focus groups at several of the homeless shelters, as well as the community kitchen, to talk directly with as many marginalized folks as we could on these issues. And so in that way, it was a consent-based process in the way that we really sought out the voices of the peoples whose lives would be most impacted by these problems, first of all, and then by the solutions that our commission would suggest. So that makes it consent-based. Any questions or discussions? Should we do a round robin or?
And then we'll do like a reading.
Okay.
Just more of a comment. I thought you put it much more clearly there than I read it here. I glanced through this when I was sitting around, and the way explaining it of focus on public safety, above other things, and coordinating response that individual departments can't. Like classic systems thing, right? You can do one part.
Exactly.
I can do one part, but nobody can think across those.
Or I sometimes
don't
say,
know-
if it's everyone's job to mop the floor, it's no one's
Then
job
nobody's
to mop
actually
the
doing it,
floor.
yeah.
From a business standpoint, lots of people understand that
Yeah,
analogy.
I don't know that you want to redraft anything, but I thought that was very clear. Didn't come across as clear in what I read.
In the PowerPoint, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's simply because was our first commission that we did outreach with, and then we did outreach subsequently with 12 other commissions, and so I've actually perfected my pitch a bit in the last month.
Okay. Anyway,
So,
I thought it
yeah.
came across very well.
Thank you for that feedback. I appreciate that. Try to improve.
Any questions? Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
Mine's a comment, so I'm that's appropriate.
Yeah.
If we're doing both at this time. I wasn't able to stick around for the CAPS Commissioner's report. I think it was a month or two ago when you did, but I had sent a note in advance thanking them for their work. And just want to note, I was at a national convening of the group Local Progress this last weekend in St. Louis, and it's sort of a local government elected leaders progressive coalitions nationwide, and has a lot of had a lot of sessions on public safety and policing and homelessness related topics, and just like really incredible learning from a lot of leaders from around the country on these issues. And what I heard there resonated very well with what the CAPS Commission put a lot of time and effort into researching and reporting on. In particular, had the opportunity to hear from 2 council members from Durham, North Carolina, about their newly created Office of Public Safety, or Community Safety, I forget. Yeah, Office of Community Safety, and the 4 pilot initiatives they had that are all highlighted in the CAPS Commission report, and their data-driven approach to addressing persistent community challenges that the sort of status quo or traditional ways of dealing with were not adequately improving conditions for folks and safety. So it was really, it seems like it's going well. They have, there was a lot of resistance at the time of creation. This inevitably gets wrapped into the conversations about defunding the police and things like that, or prison abolition and other things. And explicitly in CAPS Commission's purview, I do want to acknowledge and recognize that the council was asking them to look at non-police alternatives to things that might not be well suited to traditional policing in our public safety ecosystem. And what I wanted to report from Durham, and just hearing from those folks, is that there is now pretty widespread community support from not only from elected officials across the political spectrum in the Durham area, but also the police force in Durham, others in city government, and they were able to expand some of those pilot programs. They're working towards getting towards 24/7 availability of those programs. They're not there yet, but they were able to increase funding, expand by taking this sort of pilot and then move forward type of approach. So just one example of some of the best practices nationally that the commission was able to highlight as a companion to their community-driven work. So I just think it was another moment for me that sort of speaks to endorse the work of the commission, and I'm happy to support this letter and their efforts.
Thanks. And if I could just follow that up to tie together, because what you addressed, the Department of Community Safety in Durham focuses actually, all 4 of their teams are focused on crisis response, right? They're crisis responding teams. And just to tie it together, to compare that to what this report is recommending, the report recommends that the DCSR in Bloomington, of course, this is all contingent on the feasibility study, but the report recommends that not only would that department oversee community crisis responders, similar to Durham, but also take a more long-term approach to strategically addressing the gaps that exist, the barriers that exist, the obstacles structurally, which so it's both the short-term and the long-term approach, right? So you want to minimize harm in the crisis response, and we want to address short-term needs and fulfill, we want people to have access to crisis responders and not be afraid to call them. But also the DCSR in the report that's recommended is also suggests a data-driven approach to taking long-term actions to address these problems in a strategic way. So that's the strategic part, right? Where you're looking down the road and going, okay, how can we, make the numbers go the other direction? Thanks, Matt. And I would just point out Durham is the home of Duke University, another college town.
Clarifying question. So we're voting on two things tonight, right? So endorsing the key recommendation one, and then something about the letter. Do I have that right?
So the letter itself is the endorsement, is urging saying that the commission endorses the key recommendations of the report.
Okay.
So what would be sent to the mayor is the report and the letter.
That letter says, I fully support key recommendation one. It's actually just focused on key recommendation one, because there were 3 key recommendations. And the third one is really recommendations for the CAPS Commission itself. And the second one is more KPIs. It's a very kind of soft, techie kind of recommendation. And so it's really just focused on that first one because that's what we're focused on right now during budget hearings.
Yeah. Okay, so then are we as a commission transmitting this letter to Mayor Hamilton?
If we have a majority that votes to approve, then it would be endorsed by
basically
the commission.
Yeah, or it would be added because it's already been endorsed by several community members.
Okay.
But so because would be added to the list basically. Okay. I think the names. Oh no, I guess the names aren't printed on that one.
Okay. So the letter has not been delivered to the.
Oh, it has. It has been. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. It has been delivered with several signatures that include Charlotte Zietlow, who's well known in Bloomington as a social activist, as well as leaders from Community Kitchen, Indiana Recovery Alliance, Monroe County CASA. Who am I forgetting? Middle Way House.
I think I'm just confused that if the letter's already been sent, then how would the mayor know that we endorse it if he's already received it?
Basically our commission would be sending a message, probably an email to the mayor, letting him know that this organization has endorsed the letter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Thanks.
So yeah, we're planning to send updates basically on the endorsements that we receive.
Okay.
As we receive them.
Any other questions before we vote? Okay, do I need a motion? Do I hear a motion?
I'll motion.
Motion to vote on
Motion to
endorse.
And then I'll ask for a roll, and every person can vote.
Does it need a second?
Oh yeah, so you can write down that you motion and then Matt second, and then if you could call roll. Okay, yeah, that works.
And then do I?
So just say everyone's name, and then you'll vote yes or no or abstain.
Okay. Matt Austin.
Yes.
Matt Flaherty.
Yes.
David.
Yes.
Nigella.
Yes.
Nolan's absent. Emma.
Yes.
John.
Yes.
Jessica is gone. Me, I vote yes. Justin.
Yes.
Heidi.
Yes.
And Dennis. Okay.
So that is majority, so the motion is approved. Yay. Okay. Anyone wants to add to new business while we're here? Okay, well then I will adjourn our meeting. Our next meeting is Tuesday, October 10th, 2023 at 6 p.m. right here. Thanks, everyone.